I'm Alicia Darby. Thanks so much for coming to the Win a Pageant YouTube channel. This video that you're about to watch is a part of a bigger series that I did on controversial topics, and I would love for you to be able to check out all of the videos. So at the end of this video, I'll make sure that I link the others so that you can watch everything, so that you have a bigger picture of how you can apply this strategy in your next pageant. So my guiding principle, as I mentioned, is the Bible. And I feel myself continually challenged by this fourth area that I'm going to share with you now. And I think this fourth area, specifically for Christians, if you are a Christian and you also read the Bible and you believe that the Bible is the thing that guides your life, what is really difficult is that Christianity and the principles that the Bible state as truth are very counterculture. It's very counterculture. And so while the Bible says this thing is true, it's very difficult for those of us living in the world right now to reconcile what the Bible actually says is true with what the culture is telling us is true, which is what we want. We want to do the best for everybody. Okay. And so if you are a Christian, I'm now speaking specifically to my sisters that might be feeling this too, where you're like, well, I read the Bible and it tells me this, but how do I stand firm in that when I don't want to offend people and I don't want to open people's wounds again? And I want people to know that I'm a safe place that they can talk to. And I don't want to put people off and I don't want to write all those things. That's your heart. I know that is true for many of you. Now, I'm telling you stuff that's not necessarily strategic, okay? I'm giving you my personal opinion, okay? I want to be very clear on that. This is not, here's how you should answer your question. I want you to answer your question from your beliefs and just understand that you are, if you are a reasonable person and if you are open to being undefendable, then you should be able to communicate these things from your experience, okay? So I'm going to be communicating these things from my experience. I'm going to start with the topic of, now, personally, just to give you a little bit of background, I've not been in a position where I've had to make that decision. And in my 20s, I probably would have said that I would have gotten an if I were in that position. I'm in a completely different place in my life right now, and I have new wisdom, biblical wisdom, that I was not firm on when I was living in my 20s. I really wasn't operating from an actual belief system that really believes what the Bible says is actually true, okay? So if I were faced with the question of, do you believe in abortion? Let's just say that would be that's the question no one wants to get. Do you believe in abortion? Do you think abortion should be legalized across all states? Let's just say that that's the question that we get, okay? My answer would be absolutely not. I believe that is child sacrifice. And I believe that the Bible is my absolute solid truth. And so in the Bible, it frequently talks about the pains that came from societies that practiced child sacrifice. And I do not want to be one of those societies. Instead, I believe that as a culture, we need to step up and serve the women who have been put in positions where they may not be ready to care for a child. And we need to come alongside them, and we need to encourage them, and we need to support them. And right now, our society isn't ready to do that. There are a lot of errors that have happened in society that have left women in this very vulnerable position. That is where I want our energy and our resources to intervene. That's my personal opinion, okay? Maybe you share that opinion, maybe you don't, but I want to give you an example of how someone might say that. Okay, let me give you another example. And I want to point out, I specifically chose the word child sacrifice from a position of rhetoric, okay? That will offend people. I told you at the beginning of this video, you're probably going to be offended, and that has the potential to offend people. But I also am hoping that a reasonable person would be able to say, I hear her heart in this, and if they asked the question, they wanted the answer. Okay, let me give you another one. Control. Okay, my stance on control. Okay, I would say I believe that it's the right of the people to bear arms. Our forefathers lived in an area and in an era where if they did not have the right to bear arms, they would be very easily controlled with power and with force. And I believe that the only way for a society to truly function as the United States currently does is if we still allow this level of power and force in the hands of people. Now, I do believe that we need to have lots of checkpoints in order to ensure that the people who are legally getting their hands on guns are not in a place that they are going to endanger others. However, we do live in a broken world, and it will be impossible to fully get rid of all violence. And so I think that the most important piece is to encourage, as a country, I believe that the freedom is our number one goal to protect for our people. And as a society, I think that we need to have empowering resources to those that do have access to guns, to be able to help them understand and be able to respect it that much more. This, again, coming from my perspective, I've never lost anybody to gun violence. I've never been in a situation where I've been faced with a wild person who's out of their mind waving a gun all around a coffee shop or something. So I have not been in that position. This is where my opinion is coming from, okay? So I'm letting you girls know that. Just your opinion is going to be shaped from your experiences. This is why dialogue needs to happen, because if I only know my own experience, you're asking my opinion from my experience. This is my answer. But if we ask someone else with their experience and their opinion, they might have different experiences. What I truly believe is that God is going to give you the questions that you have experience with, because he's going to want to use that experience. He's going to want to redeem it. He's going to want to show it, hey, this is the important opinion of the world, right? Okay. Marriage equity. Okay. This is another hot button issue that many people would be afraid to discuss. I'm even afraid to discuss it because I'm like, oh my gosh, here I go. Okay. So, and I'm sure that you all would feel this way too. If you were asked this question on stage, how am I going to answer this? Like, let's hope you never get these super direct questions unless you're really prepared for them. And I think if you put the effort into actually preparing for them, you probably really will get it, because God will be like, perfect. God gives seed to the sower. And so if you're ready for it and you've really put in the work, I think God's going to be like, here you go. Here you go. This question's for you because you're ready for it, right? Okay, so let's just say you get asked the question, do you think that people should be able to marry the same sex? Let's just say that's the question. Okay. Personally, I believe that same-sex marriage is not God's design. I don't think that it's the very best way that we should be living our lives. However, as an American, I do believe that we should allow people great freedoms. And we allow people great freedoms to do many things that are what I might consider somewhat destructive. However, it doesn't infringe along the rights of others. And so I do believe that in the United States, we should allow people to marry same sex. However, I still disagree with it because I just don't think that it's God's perfect plan. That's how I would put that. So you see, for me, it's a balance of freedoms. I really don't want our nation to be just stripping freedoms from people everywhere, left and right, based on a moral code that is a religious code. Because if it weren't my religion, I might not want to subscribe to that. But I also think that it's not God's perfect will. So this is an example of balancing the things and saying, it's my belief that. Are you noticing how I start my answer starts with what I call a belief statement? I teach this inside of the academy. We talk about a belief statement. When you're getting these types of questions that it's like, gosh, how do I say this? By leading first with your belief, you allow the other person to realize, okay, yes, they kind of put their guard down, their defense mechanism comes down, because they see she's telling me what she believes, not what I should believe, okay? If I say what I think is all, you guys need to do this, then it comes off a little bit different, right? But if I start first by saying, look, what I believe is, it sets the tone for where I'm going, okay? That is how I recommend. I hope this is helpful to you ladies to really hear how it might go. Gender. There's a lot of conversations happening right now with transgender and people that are kind of like just all of the things, okay? So, and I don't even know all of them. That's why I'm like, I don't even know LGBTQ, all these things. They all mean something a little bit different, but they get sort of wrapped up into the kind of like queer category. Queer is something that's different than. And so if something is different than, it can be kind of, so it's like, oh, lesbian is in this category and gay is in this category. And we're just going to put all these things inside of this category, okay? But each of those are different, okay? So we can't just say like, oh, here's how I feel about like LGBTQ, blah, 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 all this stuff, okay? They're different experiences. All right, so let's talk about gender. One of the questions that I think that could actually easily come up in pageantry is, do you think that or would you be open to, or is it appropriate if a male, a transgender male, so that would be a male that is dressing female, were to compete in your pageant? Do you think that that would be appropriate? Let's say that that's the question that we received, okay? I would say something like, it's my belief. Let's start by stating the belief. It's my belief that transgender is a call for help. And I don't think that by welcoming a man who's dressing as a woman into a woman's space is the very best way to help that person. I think instead, there are probably a lot of other ways that we can give them access to what they're truly seeking in their life, which is likely belongingness. You know, on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, belongingness is one of the most core essential pieces to all of our needs. And I think that our culture is wanting to include people because we genuinely want to include everybody. But I don't think that just simply by letting a transgendered person compete in a woman's pageant, I don't think that that's ultimately going to solve what they truly need. Okay? So you see, I've put some thought into what I actually think about these issues. I actually have a real opinion of them. I actually would love to be able to share them on a stage. That is how I want you to be able to feel about your beliefs, no matter where they come from. It needs to be something that's said with love. It needs to be said with conviction, meaning this is what I believe and this is what I believe to be true. And it needs to be said without the worry of all of the different aspects of culture, cancel culture, mass media, the confusing rhetoric that's being used with the different connotations, and even the fact that for us Christians, that the Bible is hard to stand by. You know, the follow-up questions that we're getting right now with are like, well, you know, what if a woman really isn't going to be able to like pursue her dreams because now she has to care for a child? Well, if you really believe the Bible that God works all things for good, you have to believe that this too is good. And if you really believe it, and when you're faced with it, that will be the true test. And really not until you're faced with it will you really know your convictions, right? But when you are faced with it, my hope is that you would be so convicted in whatever it is that you believe that you would know you've worked it out, you've looked at all the different sides, you've got compassion in your heart, and that you're able to still stand for truth. It's my personal belief, just on the thought of truth for a moment. It's my personal belief that there is one truth, and the fact that people are saying that there are multiple truths is contributing to the confusion. The one truth is the actual truth that exists in the Bible. You might think that you don't believe it's your truth that gravity doesn't exist. And you're like, gravity doesn't exist. Watch. And you go like this and you try to tip over. Gravity is going to pull you to the ground because it's true. Gravity actually does exist. And so whether or not you are operating in, this is my personal opinion, whether or not you are operating under the truth of Christ, you are going to be operating under the consequences that come from any decisions that we make. All of us are subject to that, right? And so whether or not you believe it, whether or not it's your truth, whether or not you think a certain thing, doesn't matter. It's actually the truth that is the marker. But our world is confused because there are so many truths that are coming around, right? And so when it's your truth, and I am not saying that I want you to be true to your truth. I am not saying that. What I'm saying is that I hope that you have a guiding principle. Mine is the Bible. I think it's great because I think it is really true. And I think that it's the only thing that doesn't have contradictions in it. It has to be balanced with grace, because truth without grace is just mean. But grace without truth is also nasty, because you're just letting people run amok without actually living the life that God has designed for them. I hope that this experience was helpful for you. I hope that it truly was an experience for you, that you got to feel the jitters, that you got to see the vulnerability, and then you got to feel, what does it feel like for you to be able to be truly convicted in your convictions and be able to stand up on a stage, because you will be called to do so, not even just in pageantry, but in your lifetime and in coming months, you will be asked your opinion. And when you do, what will you say? You are a leader of leaders. You are an influencer. You've got to be prepared to do it justice. I hope that this has helped you so much. Thanks so much for watching. Remember that this video is a part of a bigger series, so check out these other videos that go along with it so that you've got the entire strategy. Thanks for watching.